Hello, I'm OEA President Scott DeMauro. Each week I give an update on things that are happening in and around OEA that goes to our local leaders and staff. This week, I want to direct my message directly to you, the 122,000 educators from across the state of Ohio who serve our students in Ohio's public schools and colleges and universities. This has been a very difficult summer following the shutdown of schools due to the coronavirus pandemic back in March. We all deeply miss our students, and we understand how important it is to get back to in-person instruction. But we've been listening to our members, and our members have told us that they are concerned about their health and safety, the health and safety of their students and their families and their communities. Just last week, we completed a poll of over 2,000 members, a scientifically valid sample of members across the state. 69% of those members said that right now, given the circumstances, they don't feel that it will be safe to go back to school. Earlier today, the OEA Board of Directors acted unanimously to adopt the following statement on how to safely and equitably reopen our schools, and I'd like to share that with you now. On the authority of the Ohio Education Association Board of Directors, it is the position of OEA that Ohio's schools and campuses should only reopen for in-person instruction when conditions are met that ensure the safety of students, educators, education support professionals, their families, and communities. OEA stands with its members, parents, and community partners in recognizing the critical role schools play in academic and non-academic success of students. And we believe that the reopening of schools for in-person instruction is essential for the well-being of students, families, and communities. Given the dangers posed by the spread of COVID-19, however, OEA believes that reopening for in-person instruction prematurely poses unacceptable risks to the lives and health of students, adults who work in schools, the people they care for. Our members have entered education professions because they deeply care about the success of all students, and we are committed to meeting the needs of students in any mode of learning that maintains safety, including through remote learning as long as it is necessary. Given the alarming number of positive coronavirus cases in Ohio, OEA calls on Governor Mike DeWine and the Ohio Department of Health to require adherence to all standards based on U.S. Center for Disease Control guidelines for schools, including mandatory mask or face coverings for students, staff, and visitors. Strict adherence to 6-foot physical distancing between individuals. Stringent hand washing and sanitizing protocols. Daily health checks for students and staff. And strict protocols for quarantining and isolating those who are presumed positive for COVID-19 and anyone who has been exposed to the virus. Ample testing must also be available to ensure individuals afflicted with COVID-19 are negative prior to returning to school. And evidence-based protocols for contact tracing must also be in place to ensure anyone who has been exposed to the virus is alerted and required to be isolated from the school or campus population. The shutdown of schools to in-person learning for the last several months of the 2019-2020 academic year both exposed and exacerbated deep levels of inequity in our education system, hitting students with special needs, students of color, students in high poverty communities especially hard. OEA is committed to advocating for equitable learning opportunities for all students, regardless of what mode of instruction is offered in any given time or location. All decisions on how and when to reopen schools must be made with attention to meeting student needs, starting with health and safety. Under Ohio's warning system, OEA believes that any school or campus building located in a county designated as Level 4, purple, or Level 3, red, must remain closed to in-person instruction. Until a vaccine or cure for COVID-19 is widely available, schools in all counties, including Level 2, orange, Level 1, yellow, must be permitted to open for in-person instruction only if all CDC requirements can be fully met. We also believe that school districts or campuses that are located in multiple counties should adhere to restrictions linked to the county with the highest alert level. If a school or campus building is located in a county that is downgraded from level 4 or 3 to 2 or 1, due to a reduction of risk factors as identified by the state, a minimum of 2 weeks must be provided to allow for transition from remote to in-person instruction. No employee in any setting should be forced to choose between their livelihood and their health or safety. High-risk students, staff, and families must be protected through appropriate accommodations such as remote learning and instruction arrangements. Those who are required to quarantine or isolate themselves because of exposure to COVID-19 should be provided with extensions of leave that allow them to be protected from economic harm because of their inability to perform their work in an in-person educational setting. To open safely, Ohio's public schools need resources. OEA calls on elected leaders at the federal and state level to act swiftly to provide additional emergency funding for public education to cover increased costs associated with the COVID pandemic, including but not limited to the following: funding for additional teachers to allow for smaller class sizes to meet physical distancing requirements, funding for school nurses and school health support staff to implement protocols for symptomatic students and staff, funding for staffing to cover substitute or temporary staff to ensure supervision of classes when teachers are required to be isolated and or work remotely due to exposure to the virus or underlying health conditions, funding for additional bus drivers, bus aides, and other costs associated with additional school bus routes to ensure physical distancing for safe transportation of students, funding for additional paraprofessionals and other education support staff to assist with student learning and safety needs, funding for additional custodial staff to perform essential cleaning and disinfecting of schools, campus buildings, and buses, funding for essential personal protective equipment or PPE, masks, hand sanitizer, cleaning supplies, and other materials needed to maintain a safe learning environment in schools and campus buildings and in school transportation, funding for improvements to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or HVAC systems, to ensure air quality and limit viral spread, funding for the installation of plexiglass protections where necessary, funding to provide sufficient classroom supplies and consumables so all students have their own, funding for technology devices and high-speed internet to ensure all students have reliable, quality access to remote learning platforms, funding for professional development and training to ensure educators are well prepared to deliver quality instruction in a variety of modes, including remotely, funding for wraparound services and staffing to meet a range of social, emotional, nutritional, and health needs as students and families, particularly from high poverty backgrounds, struggle with issues related to the downturn in the economy, funding for increased childcare needs for school employees and families in our communities. Procedures must be in place to ensure educators and families have a voice in how any return to in-person instruction occurs and how necessary protections function throughout the school year. Recognizing that school districts and institutions of higher education have control at the local level over how schools and campuses will operate within public health requirements, including contingency plans for in-person, hybrid, and remote modes of instruction, OEA is committed to supporting each of our local affiliates as they use the collective bargaining process and health and safety committees for creative problem solving. OEA will continue to organize and engage members to effectively advocate for healthy and safe learning and working conditions, essential legal protections for our members, and equitable learning opportunities for all students. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this message. Please know, my fellow educators from across the state, OEA stands with you. We believe that schools need to reopen only when conditions are safe to do so in person. Thank you very much.